Long before modern chemistry, long before we had the periodic table or high school lab safety goggles, the alchemists stood at the edge of a massive mystery. We're usually taught that alchemists were just eccentric guys trying to turn lead into gold to get rich quick. And sure, some definitely were. But for the real practitioners, the philosophers like Paracelsus or the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, alchemy was never actually about these base metals. They were practicing an art of transmutation. For them, the lead was the heavy, materialistic, unrefined human mind. The goal they were trying to create, that was a spiritually enlightened, virtuous person. Does that sound familiar? Because it should. In the tiled recesses of a Masonic lodge, a candidate stands at a very similar edge. In the Grand Lodge of Canada, we don't talk about furnaces or crucibles, but we do talk a lot about the rough ashlar. We describe it as a man in his infant or unrefined state. Rough, uneven, and if we're being honest, a bit of a jagged mess. He's that piece of limestone pulled straight from a quarry in South Ontario, full of edges that just don't fit anywhere. Our entire system of self-improvement is essentially alchemical. We take that rough ashlar and through a daily advance in Masonic knowledge, we try to transmute it into a perfect ashlar, a stone that is squared, polished, and ready to fit perfectly into the wall. Essentially, whoever is carefully and deliberately squaring his stone is actually fitting himself for his place in a much larger intended structure. In this video, I want to bridge that gap. I want to show you how the ancient flame of the alchemists is the same light we're looking for in the lodge. We're going to look at how the process of turning lead into gold is the exact same journey as turning a waste man into a master mason. Now, if we're going to talk alchemy, we have to talk about where it all starts. This entire royal art traces back to a legendary, almost mythical figure named Hermes Trismegistus. The Greeks call him thrice great. They believed he knew the three parts of the wisdom of the whole world: alchemy, astrology, and theurgy. Legend says he wrote a text called the Emerald Tablet. It's short, cryptic, and it's basically the Masonic monitor of the alchemical world. It gave us that famous line you've probably seen on a t-shirt or a coffee mug: as above, so below. But for a Mason, that's not just a cool quote, it's a blueprint. It means that the work we do on ourselves internally, the private, quiet labor of fixing our own character, actually reflects the intended structure that the grand architect has planned for the entire world. We aren't just building ourselves, we're participating in the construction of a much larger divine temple. We are the microcosm working to align with the macrocosm. To reach that enlightenment, alchemists followed a process called the magnum opus, or the great work. They broke it down into 4 distinct stages based on color. And if you look closely at Masonic degrees, you'll see the exact same roadmap. The first stage is Negrido, or the Blackness. In the lab, this was called putrefaction. It's a stage where you take the raw material and you break it down. You decompose it. You strip away everything that isn't essential until you're left with the prima materia, the first matter. Think about the candidate inside the anteroom. He's stripped of his metals. He's taken away from the worldly distinctions of his job, his bank account, and his ego. He's placed in a state of darkness. In our ritual, we talk about this as a figurative death to the world. Why? Because you can't build a perfect ashlar until you've cleared away the jagged, useless bits of the rough ashlar. This is the most uncomfortable part of the process. It's facing the blackness of your own leaden mind, the habits, the prejudices, and the laziness that make you a waste man, as we call it back home in Jamaica. You have to be willing to let that old version of yourself die so that a life restored can actually begin. Just like the alchemist has to trust the fire to break down the lead, the entered apprentice has to trust the process of the lodge to break down his ego. You can't square a stone that refuses to admit it's out of shape. Negrido is that moment of radical honesty where you say, I am rough, I am uneven, and I need the work. Once the breakdown is done, we move into the second stage, Albedo, or the whiteness. In alchemy, this is the stage of washing and purification. It's where the alchemist takes that charred, broken down material and starts to scrub it clean. In Masonry, we call this being a fellowcraft. If Negrido was about admitting you're a mess, Albedo is about doing something about it. This is where the real life coaching kicks in. We're given the square and the level, tools designed to smooth out the edges. How do we do that? By climbing the winding stairs and hitting the books. We get to work with the several liberal arts and sciences: grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. A lot of guys see that list and think it's just a weird medieval homework assignment. But alchemically speaking, this is the purification of the mind. You're learning how to think, how to communicate, and how the universe actually works. You're transmuting ignorance into actual insight. Think about the junior warden's lecture in Masonry. We talk about the ornaments and jewels of the lodge, but the real jewel is a Mason who has polished his character. Paracelsus believed that the alchemist acts in harmony with nature to support its growth. That's exactly what a fellowcraft is doing. He's supporting his own spiritual growth by using education to wash away the grime of his old life. The goal here is to make sure our character is as clean and spotless as that white leather apron we're so proud of. It's not just a fancy costume for the parade. It's a symbol of a mind that has been purified by knowledge. You're no longer just a rock from the quarry. You're starting to look like something that belongs in a temple. After the purification comes the dawning of solar light. Alchemists call this Citrinitas, or the yellowing. It's a stage of awakening. In the lab, this was when the silver of the Albedo stage began to turn yellow, reflecting the dawning sun. In the Masonic world, this is the Master Mason degree. This is the moment where everything shifts. You've broken down the ego, you've polished your mind with knowledge, and now you finally see the why. You aren't just learning anymore, you're being raised. In this degree, we're given a new set of working tools: the skirt, the pencil, and the compasses. Think about that skirt for a second. Its job is to lay down a straight line for the guidance of a workman. Alchemically, this is the dawning of clarity. We realize that our life isn't just a random series of events. It's a straight and undeviating line of conduct, guided by the volume of the sacred law. Then you have the pencil. It reminds us that the grand architect has a master plan and that our every word and action is being recorded. This is the awakening because you suddenly realize the stakes. You stop just hanging out with the guys and realizing you have a responsibility to the work. You realize that your personal transformation isn't just about being a nice guy. It's about fitting yourself as a living stone into a structure that spans the heavens. Citrinitas is that light bulb moment where you see the connection between your small life and the vast designs of the universe. You aren't just a stone anymore. You're an active part of the architecture. Finally, we reach the end game, Rubedo, or the redness. In alchemy, this is the final union of opposites, often called the chemical wedding. It's where the solar king and the lunar queen meet and form their union. The philosopher's stone is born. In Freemasonry, this could be alluded to the birth of the Perfect Ashlar. If you look at the famous Splendor Solace manuscript, The illustration of the red sun represents the ultimate goal, purified gold. For us, that gold is the man who has integrated all the lessons of the craft. He's no longer just trying to be better. He is better. He has balanced the internal dualities of his nature. In Masonic ritual, specifically the Junior Warden's lecture, we learn about the 4 pendant tassels in the corners of the lodge. These tassels represent the 4 cardinal virtues: temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. These aren't just abstract ideas. They are the chemical components of a master mason. When a guy actually lives these out, when he's got his ego in check, which is temperance, and the guts to do the right thing even when it's hard, fortitude, that's when he becomes a living stone. This is the creation of the stone. The perfect ashlar is described as the immovable jewel for the more expert workman. You become the standard. You become the guy that the younger brothers look to when they're trying to figure out what a man of good character actually looks like. You've transmuted the leaded waste man mentality into something of infinite value to your community and your family. As our Grand Master recently put it in his address, we need to carry and rub our shiny penny every single day. That penny is a symbol of our effort, and that effort is the literal alchemy of the soul. You start as a jagged rock from a quarry, but through the fire of the work, you end as a perfect ashlar, a piece of spiritual gold, fit for that house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Now, a caution. The part nobody likes to talk about because it ruins the happily ever after vibe of the ritual. Just because you reached Rubedo, just because you're a master mason and people call you brother, doesn't mean the furnace is turned off. In fact, that's when the fire needs to be watched most carefully. Alchemists knew that the work was never technically done. Gold can be melted back into liquid. A stone can be eroded by the elements. Even after this massive transmutation, or base self, the waste man you thought you left in the anteroom, is still there. He's in the darkness, calling out to you. He is whispering from the shadows of your ego, trying to lure you back into chaos and imperfection. He wants you to stop squaring your stone. He wants you to go back to being a jagged, useless rock that's only interested in external advantages of rank and fortune. We're taught that masonry is a daily advance. It's not a destination, it's a maintenance schedule. Think about an historical heritage building. If you stop the maintenance, if you let the roof leak or the foundation settle, that intended structure is going to fall apart. Chaos doesn't wait for invitation. It's always trying to reclaim the ground you've won. The work of a mason is to ensure the structure we've built is maintained. We have to be the guardians of our own transmutation. If we stop being resilient, if we stop living with purpose and serving our community, the lead starts to creep back in, and the gold starts to tarnish. Being a master mason isn't a certificate you hang on the wall and forget about. It's a commitment to stay in the crucible. You have to keep the flame of the alchemist burning every single day to keep that waste man at bay. Because the second you think you're done is the second the chaos starts winning. At the end of the day, whether you're talking about ancient Egyptian philosophers, Renaissance alchemists, or a group of guys in a basement, we're talking about the same thing: the beautiful, difficult, lifelong task of refining the human soul. The royal art of alchemy and the speculative science of masonry are two sides of the same shiny penny. We are both the alchemist and the metal. Drop a comment below and let me know, what part of your character are you currently transmuting? How are you keeping your furnace burning this week? Thanks for watching. Remain on the level. This is the Brotherly Love Podcast. Let's get to work.